About a year and a half ago, I pulled my transfer case out of my TJ and I installed a slip yoke eliminator so that I could get rid of my transfer case drop. Since that time, I've driven my Jeep locally in Washington State and all the way to Moab for Easter Jeep Safari in 2023. After returning from that trip, some gear noise has started to develop seemingly throughout the Jeep, and the transfer case has started to dislike shifting, especially into 4 low and out of 4 high. For some reason, I flushed fluids and found that the front axle had a lot of excess metal, but since the transfer case is the one that actually had tangible mechanical issues, I decided to tackle it first in this video to see if that's really the only problem with the Jeep. All right, let's get this torn down. The magnet just has some normal super duper fine metal powder on it. The screen for the pump has, well, some plastic Speedo gear shavings on it. That needs to be aligned a little bit better. The fluid isn't bad again, but this time there are a few little sparkles in there. Hopefully you can see those. Okay, the transfer case is fully torn down and the results are in. As one might expect, the gear noise is the planetary gear set, and you can see there's a lot of waviness on the edge of these gears. There's a lot of pitting in the teeth. You can see it right there. Little chunks out of this thing. On the planets, you can see on this one, there's a whole bunch of these horizontal lines kind of cut into it. So that's kind of weird. On this gear over here, there's some pitting in different places. This one, there's some really visible pitting right there. And it's clear that on the ring gear too, there's been some significant wear on the teeth. There's even a few little tiny chunks out of some places. I'm not sure whether that would be savable or not, if a protective coating's been worn off of it or anything like that, because I know that those are kind of part of the case and not really supposed to be serviced. There's some expensive parts I'd have to buy if I want to actually use this case again, so it may make sense to buy another case and swap my SYE over. We'll see what happens. I'll get back to you then. So I found that the most economical thing to do was just to get another NP231J from someone else. So that's what I've done. I've acquired another one, and I'm going to mix the parts from this one with the parts from the other one to make the best possible transfer case between the two that I can. As far as I know, this one works perfectly, so hopefully this will be easy. Swap some sensors over, seal it up, good to go. right, the four-wheel drive sensor and the slip yoke eliminator and everything else are swapped over. When the RTV is dry, we'll put it back in the Jeep. I looked inside it and it seemed like it was in great condition. It spins great by hand, so I think it's gonna work. Okay, so I've encountered a pretty decent compatibility issue here. The transfer case that I acquired was from a '94 Grand Cherokee. When I picked it up, I inspected it, made sure that the spline count was the same, 23 spline, and that by just feel approximation, the depth was the same, in that the input shaft coming from the transmission would fit into it. But here's what I found. So the old input here is pretty deep, and the splines are cut all the way back pretty far, and then behind that is just open space. So if the end of your shaft sticks in further, it wouldn't matter. In this one, the depth is cut far enough that it would fit, but the splines aren't cut back far enough, and there's this ring blocking it from going in. It stops dead in its tracks. So I've got to figure out a solution to that. I think I know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to order some parts, and I'll let you know when I have them back in. Okay, well, I have a solution for this thing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use 2 clocking rings to space the transfer case a little bit backwards from the back of the transmission so that the transmission output shaft goes into this at just the right depth. And it's a 4-liter. It should be just fine. I'm not worried about not having enough engagement. But you're probably wondering, well, the studs are too short now. Okay, I'll fix that. Okay, so the studs are now longer. But you're probably wondering, if you know a thing or two about transfer cases, how am I going to keep this concentrically located in the back of the transmission? Because that ring doesn't stick out far enough anymore. Okay, well, yeah, that's weird, but keen-eyed among you will know that there's not going to be any shaft sticking out to seal in the back of the transmission. So how am I going to do that? This one's going to be unconventional. Maybe now you can see where I'm going with this. So I cut a piece of the old input shaft off at just the right length, and it is going to sit there and float on the splined output shaft of the transmission and act as my sealing surface and sit right up against this. They're not being attached together, they're not being welded, it's just going to float there. Okay, should be all buttoned up and ready to go. Let's see if she fits. Well, now that the transfer case is bolted in there, there's one thing left to do you might be wondering about, and that is the shift linkage. The transfer case is about 3/4 of an inch further back than it was before, so will it line up? No, it won't work. So, we're gonna upgrade to a B&M shift cable system. So I'm gonna put that on, get everything else buttoned up, and and it'll be ready for a rip. We'll see how it works. This lower bracket hits the transmission in this little area right here. I saw some concurrent reviews online, so I kind of expected there to be interference somewhere. I'm gonna cut it out. Alright, well, I've driven it a few miles and there are still some noise issues. However, the transfer case shifts and feels and behaves a lot better in every way, so at least we got that taken care of. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for 1,000 subscribers. See you in the next video.